Instead of dreading negativity or recoiling whenever it hits, we can treat our negative thoughts like errors in our mental programming. Just like errors in a piece of computer software, we can choose to decide that each negative thought is actually helping us. It tells us that we have a problem. It points to what that problem is. And very often, it shows us exactly how to fix it. Welcome to The Joy Within. I'm Kyle Greenfield, and I believe that you have the ability to become calm, confident, and happy anytime that you choose. Some days, that's easier than others, but with the right tools and the right way of thinking, we can unlock incredible states of joy, peace, and well-being within us. So visit thejoywithin.org to get started today, so that together we can create a happier and more peaceful world. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today I have a really fun and kind of dorky episode for you. I want to share a method that I use sometimes to help point out and make fun of my negative patterns. I call it the error exception method, and it's something I drew from the realm of computer science. Now, I'm not an expert programmer, not by any means, but I have done a fair amount of coding over the years, and I think there's a lot that we can learn from this sort of algorithmic approach to our thoughts. So first, I'll explain how I think we can use this analogy from computer science, and then I'll give you 3 exercises that you can take to apply it for yourself. So the basic idea is, whenever you're writing software, you're inevitably going to get error messages, problems in your code that you have to deal with. Now, when you're first learning to program, at least when I was first starting out, I found this endlessly frustrating. If you've ever written a line of code, then you know what I mean. You know how annoying this can be. Because what happens is you think you've written this beautiful piece of code. You've got a nice function defined. You've got a nice piece of software that's starting to form. And then you go to run it to test it. And nothing happens. Computer says no. You get these ugly error messages firing back at you. And let's be honest, half the time you have no idea what they mean. At least I didn't. And the really annoying thing is that they can turn into just an endless stream of problems, one after another. You fix one and another problem pops up. It's kind of like whack-a-mole. Anyway, when I was first learning programming, I really hated these bugs. I'd spend hours trying to fix them, and it'd turn out there was just a misplaced comma somewhere. But as I gained a bit of experience, my attitude changed. I stopped hating the error messages, and I started to realize just how helpful these errors actually were, because they would flag as soon as possible when I had a problem. They would point to exactly where that problem was, what type of problem it was, and often what I could do to fix it. The point is, we can do the same thing with our negative thoughts. Instead of dreading negativity or recoiling whenever it hits, we can treat our negative thoughts like errors in our mental programming. We don't have to interpret our thoughts as bad or frustrating or annoying. Just like errors in a piece of computer software, we can choose to decide that each negative thought is actually helping us. It tells us that we have a problem. It points to what that problem is, maybe a situation, a topic, or a belief that we need to work on, and very often, it shows us exactly how to fix it. I believe that choosing to think of negative thoughts in this way is by itself incredibly powerful, because it takes the pressure off of our need to feel like we shouldn't have those thoughts. When I was first learning to code, every time I would get an error, I thought it was because I had done something wrong. Like, I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, I didn't. And when we have negative thoughts, it can sometimes feel like every thought is itself just this indictment, a critique of our ability to think otherwise. But that's not true. Expert programmers still have to deal with bugs every single day. But they know that those bugs aren't judgments on their ability. They don't get thrown off by them. They use them to fix the problem and build a better piece of software. Even the most empowered, positive, confident people out there will still have negative thoughts. They'll still have moments of doubt or episodes that trigger them. But they don't get hung up on it. They just address the problem and move on. So how can we do that? Well, in computer science, one common solution is something called exception handling. A programmer will write the software in a way that says, try this. If you get an error, or if you get this specific error, then do this other thing. But if you get a different specific error, then do something else. And they can chain these together so that those little blips and hiccups can't destroy the program. We can apply the same approach to dealing with our thoughts. So I like to think of this method on 2 levels. Level 1 is simply the mental reframe of noticing that you have an error. Now remember, there's no judgment in this. It is the decision that negativity just means there is an error in my thinking. That's it. Not that it's your fault, not that you're a terrible person because of it, not that you should have gotten past this by now. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means there is an error, a bug, somewhere in your mental programming. All you have to do is identify that error. And I like to have fun with this step. I like to think to myself, oops, there's another error message. Now, maybe you imagine a red light flashing or an alarm going off of some sort. And over time, doing this will change your relationship to your negative thoughts because you won't see the negativity as the problem. You'll see the negativity as helping point you towards a solution. Just like if a fire alarm is going off in your house, it's not the fire alarm's fault that it's going off. It means there's some other problem somewhere. And you're grateful that you have that alarm so that you can get out safely or put out the fire. In the same way, we can start to see negativity as helping to point us towards the solution, helping us to build a better mental program. And if the negativity is small or unimportant, then silently shouting to ourselves, error message, can knock us back into a better headspace. That's level 1, just calling them out, nothing more. Once you get good at that, level 2 then is the exception handling part. This is about learning when to do what for you. Basically, it's about stacking different types of solutions together, and it's a big part of why we want to have a very robust personal toolkit, personal set of strategies that we know will work for us. Because if we do, we can start to create little rules or habits for ourselves based on what type of negativity that we're experiencing in that moment. So that might sound something like, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I need to take a moment to chunk things down. If I'm feeling frustrated, I need to do a 5-minute reset. If I'm feeling really angry, I'm going to step back and then I'm going to schedule a time tomorrow to reflect and reframe those thoughts. Don't overthink the process. More than anything, it's about that mental reframe. Negative thoughts are just error messages. They point you to what you need to work on so you can build better habits of thought, better responses and beliefs over time. You don't have to figure it all out on day 1. So to help you use this, I want to share 3 different exercises that you can use. And I think you'll find that if you practice these, they will help you to apply this idea to shifting your thoughts. First, we'll walk through flagging the error. Then we'll talk about assigning an error type, and I'll explain what I mean by that in just a minute. And lastly, we'll dive into the exception handling that I just mentioned. Hey guys, so I don't run outside ads or get sponsors for the podcast, which means I rely on you to help keep it going. The best way you can do that is to help spread the word. Leave a 5-star review, tell your friends, share it on social. I think we all know people who are struggling, and I know issues like stress and negativity can be hard to talk about, which makes sharing a link a really easy way to connect and tell someone you care. And if you find the podcast helpful, I promise you they will too. So do me a quick favor and think of 3 people you know who would benefit from this podcast and send them a link. That's it. Now, back to the show. The first exercise to practice is simply to flag the error. I already mentioned this. When you catch yourself responding from thoughts that you do not prefer, you can tell yourself, error message, or imagine an alert or a flashing light going off anytime that you feel that negative thought. The key here is to practice with the little things first. You catch yourself complaining about the line in the supermarket, so you think, oops, another error message. When you catch yourself groaning about that weird text that you just got from your brother-in-law, you imagine, alert, alert, flashing in your mind. It's much easier to have fun and to build this habit when you play with it on the little things that aren't that important to you. Which means that even though you can apply this method to just about any type of negative thinking, to practice it, I find it works best to practice catching those somewhat random interjections from that little voice in your head. Those little, annoying non sequiturs and mini judgments that we all have as we go about the day. Then you can gradually work on it to build up to more important or more triggering topics. So to put this into practice, over the next 24 hours, all you have to do is just be on the lookout for these little mental errors and practice catching the error. When you do, write it down. Write, I caught myself complaining about the line at the supermarket. Or, I really groaned after reading that text from Chris. So I encourage you to keep these notes as a sort of error log, so to speak, which will begin to turn the tables on them. So rather than feel down about the negative thought, you can choose to be eager, excited, or proud to catch them. And we'll also use this error log in a minute to help you go deeper. The second exercise is something I call assigning error types. After you've caught a few of your mental errors, you can then double down on this method by clarifying what type of error message that negative thought is. So in computer programming, you'll get messages that say something like value error, or syntax error, or type error, which all mean different things. So in the same way, we can assign ourselves a handful of common error types for our thoughts, and you can give yourself helpful descriptors for each. So for example, you might write something like overwhelm error, focusing on what I do not have time for, rather than on what I can do right now. Frustration error, getting mad at myself for not being where I think I should be. Anger error, blaming others for my current circumstance. Depression error, choosing to feel down instead of finding peace in the present moment. Personally, I like thinking of these errors in this way, because they make light of the problem while somewhat comically pointing us towards the solution. So to put this exercise into practice, I want you to write your own error types. You can take inspiration from the ones I just gave, but I think this works best when you write something that is specific to you. Just think about some of the common negative emotions that you feel, or the common negative patterns that you know that you fall into. Then turn them into an error that's just a little bit silly, but also points to a hard truth. If you get stuck here, use your error log from the last exercise. Spend a bit more time on the first exercise writing down the errors. Then you can go back through your list to create categories based on the negative thoughts that you've had recently. So if you had that complaint at the supermarket, you might say, complaint error, getting upset at random little things that don't matter. Or for that weird text from your brother-in-law, you might say, weirdness error, judging others for what they think is funny. Again, write what resonates with you. The last strategy with this method is to apply the idea of exception handling. Now this works really, really well when you tack it on to the specific errors that you identified in the last exercise. So the idea is that if we know these errors are coming, we can be prepared and pre-plan options for how we're going to handle them. So to keep the analogy of computer science going, programmers will often use something called the try-except method. Basically, it's like saying, try to do this unless there's an error, then go do something else. And here's how that might look when we deal with our thoughts. We might say, try to stay calm under pressure, except overwhelm error. Then step back and choose one and only one task to focus on right now. Or try to finish this task, except frustration error. Then take a 5-minute break. Or try to keep a positive focus, except depression error. Then go meditate for 10 minutes. And if you really want to go for it, you can start to stack different actions together. So for example, maybe that last one becomes something like, try to keep a positive focus, except depression error. Then meditate for 10 minutes, except can't quiet the mind. Then go for a walk, except it's cold and raining. Then go listen to a Tony Robbins seminar while cooking a nice warm soup. Obviously, I'm just making this up. The point is for you to predefine a handful of actions that will help you to overcome that type of situation. And I recommend that you come up with a handful of options for your most common errors. Remember, this is a game, so have fun with it. Be a bit silly. And by doing this, we're stripping power away from the negative thought and reorienting you towards a more empowered next step. Before we wrap things up, I want to share a quick example of how you might actually use this method in real life. Because chances are you're not going to use it word for word the way I just outlined in the exercises. That's just for practice. That's just for fun. The point is to train the habit of response. So here's an example that actually happened to me a few weeks ago. I was walking my dog, and another dog comes up to us off lead and really starts pestering and bothering my dog. Now, I tried to walk off for a minute, and the dog just followed us. So I stopped, and I looked around for the owner, and I just said, "Hey, can you call your dog, please?" And the guy gave me this really nasty, snarky look, and he just kind of scoffed and said, "Oh, come on, Rory." And, of course, the dog just ignored him. So I took a few more steps, and again, the dog started to follow us, still really pestering, trying to jump on my dog. So again, I just said more firmly, "Please, can you just get your dog?" And the guy literally didn't do anything. So then, and I know I probably shouldn't have, but I did, I said, "If you can't control your dog, it shouldn't be off lead." And the guy just gave me this look, and he said, "Oh, and what are you going to do about it?" And that's when a little flash went off in my mind. And I thought, anger. Try to resolve the situation. Except when angry. Then just walk away. And I did. And his dog followed us for a while, back the way that we'd come for a bit. And after another couple of minutes, ran off. Now, clearly, in the moment, I thought I was right. And I thought that other guy was being kind of a jerk. And from my perspective, I've had plenty of other bad experiences with dogs being aggressive, and I know I have some strong opinions about that. But I also shouldn't allow that to deteriorate the situation just because I happen to get a little bit upset. I don't know anything about what's going on with that other guy, or why he couldn't just grab his dog, or what. So even though I thought he should have acted differently, I can't control that, and I didn't want to let that ruin my day. And because I was able to flag that I was becoming angry before I was actually too upset, and because I knew what to do when that happens, I was able to redirect, take a different action, and enjoy the rest of my walk. So the point of this method is not that you go through life carrying a list of error messages in your pocket. It's that working through your negative patterns in this way, which I find kind of fun and kind of silly, then allows you to be able to identify and head off that negativity when it actually comes. The technique just nudges your awareness just enough so that you can catch the negative thoughts earlier and take a better course of action. So I hope you find this process helpful. Like I said, take this, make it your own, make it fun for you. And if you enjoy it, please do me a quick favor and either tell a friend about the show or leave a 5-star review, or both. It only takes a second, and it helps me to know that you find this valuable. So thank you so much for your time. Know that I love you and I appreciate you wherever you are, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to The Joy Within. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do what you can to spread the word. I believe that we all deserve to feel calm, confident, and happy literally every single day. But with everything that's going on in the world, we need to work together to remind ourselves of that in as many little ways as we can. So please, pass this along to the people you care about. Email a friend, share it on social, do whatever feels right for you, so that hopefully, together, we can create a little more peace in our crazy modern world.